don't have to clap. I was trying to think about where the best place to begin on this whole thing, because I realized it's sort of been about 2 years maybe in the past, maybe even 2.5. I got involved with this group 2 years ago, a different name then, and they got started. A bunch of them had gone to Sierra Leone under scholarships and were like so taken by things there that they decided, wow, it'd be really cool if we couldn't start this UNT-run nonprofit organization, right? So I helped them file paperwork for it, and ever since it's been a 501c3 nonprofit, right? What they envisioned was that, wow, there should really be a student group that does kind of training for international development, because weirdly enough, there's just not much out there. So it would be really cool if UNT students could do 2 things. Number one, both have experience running a nonprofit organization, right? And then number 2, actually get experience in doing international development, be it sort of training, like how to do international development stuff, or even gaining experience doing fundraising and then actually sort of donating stuff, or actually feeling like they were contributing, you know, in the bigger picture and actually sort of doing something, right? Yeah, and so because they'd gone to Sierra Leone, it was a place that I'd been lots. I'd been a Peace Corps volunteer there way back when, and then had done my doctoral work there. So had lived about 3 years of life there. And so they brought me on board, and I guess I've been sort of involved ever since. So more about that later. So they asked me 2 years ago, hey, couldn't you do some kind of field school where you take UNT students to do sort of a practice-oriented, development-oriented kind of thing, right? Because as it turns out, particularly for all these students who are interested in international development, there's almost nothing. Like as far as sort of like real practice kinds of experiences out there. There's not, you know, real hands-on internship kind of stuff for people internationally. And so you can do it on your own, and it's totally fine, and people do it. Like I had once met this Australian woman in Sierra Leone who found a local organization that online that she, you know, sort of was taken with, and she just called around. She actually put together, she had like a list of 10. And so she started calling around to them and saying, hey, I'd love to work for you guys and get my own internship kind of experience. If you'll, A, help me find a place to stay. Actually, that was it. Oh, and then, yeah, let me work in your office. And so she finally found one organization that was like, yeah, we'd love to have you. That'd be great. You know, you can work in the office. We'll take you out in the field. We'll help you find a place to stay. So she had to buy her own food, and she had to buy her plane ticket. But anyway, so that sort of got my own wheels spinning like, well, wow, why couldn't we just do that as a UNT group, right? Like it would be really easy. And so, anyway, that's what we started. So I took 2 students summer before last, and then 9 students, 3 of which are here, which I'm very excited about, this past summer. You guys raise your hand. Right in the center. Yeah, and so I'll just give you an overview of what I did. So before we left, I signed a bunch of readings, sort of history and culture kind of readings, international development kind of readings, particularly like critical kinds of stuff, because I'm an anthropologist, and anthropologists are often very critical of development. But we also work in development fields, and we do international development. So that was sort of like the last third of kind of our pre-trip readings, which was sort of about, you know, what do you get from doing international development, how to actually do it. So before the trip, I had called around, Jessica called around a bunch of, actually I can't, I gotta actually scroll around while I call around for a bunch of, to a bunch of NGOs, and Here's some of them. In different sectors. So the field of international development is kind of divided up into people that work in different sectors, right? Sectors are often things like environmental stuff or agricultural stuff, gender kind of stuff, which is often reproductive health, it's sometimes women and children, youth development, microfinance, that's really big these days. You guys know what that is? Not everybody. So it's giving out small, really small loans. There's been a lot of work in international development that shows how incredibly valuable giving out really small loans is in developing countries, particularly to women. There are difficulties with it, but women are often really good at investing money and sort of feeding families, both their own and more, with the money, and sort of creating these sort of small business opportunities. And so the stuff about microloan, it started with this thing called the Grameen Bank back in the 80s, late 70s, 80s, and so it has really kind of blossomed. It's sort of the focal point for a lot of international development, giving these really small-scale loans at almost no interest to people to start projects. So, you know, women come up with this idea, not just women, but people come up with this idea for sort of a little small-scale business, right? They apply to this kind of Grameen Bank sort of organization. They get a small loan, might be $100, right? Maybe often less, and then they have to sort of do something with it, right? Health, agricultural development, and then children and education. And you guys, there are more sectors. These were just sort of the ones that I had sort of that had found that were obvious and easy in Sierra Leone. And there were others. We had missing. What was yours? Bolivia. Okay, so I have your others. Okay. So anyway, these are the organizations underneath of those, right? With our very own Jessica there. Yeah, and so I wanted this to be the focal point of the trip, where UNT students would essentially just be interns, would work for these organizations. So I had done some basic networking ahead of time, tried to match UNT students up with organizations that they were sort of interested in. And then most of the trip was UNT students volunteering for them. It was hanging out in offices, it was also getting out into the field, it was also banging their heads against the wall, because sometimes what they were supposed to be doing, work in a developing country is not always what it never works out the way you think it's going to work out. And life moves very slowly sometimes, right? And so, so Ariel, your guy, was like missing for a couple days in the very beginning, and so everybody was like, well, how to use Ariel, what do we do? So anyway, I know a bunch of them have actually still been doing work since the trip. So even though it was sort of sandwiched into this small time period of about 2 weeks, they have still, some of them have still been put to work by their organizations. So that wasn't all of it. There were other parts of the trip as well. I think for that part, I was just going to show you guys some slides, if I could. Do we have questions so far? So UNT actually really supports this kind of stuff. You know, it turns out that there was this wealthy Thai UNT alumnus, which is weird for UNT to be able to say that, because we don't have a lot of wealthy alumni, right? And so there was a guy from Thailand who is from Thailand, and his name is Charn Uswachoke. And so, I don't even know how to say it. Anybody know Thai stuff? So yeah, he has all this money available for UNT faculty to bring innovative international and international development kinds of programs to UNT. And so he that organization gave me some seed money to go 2 years ago with UNT students to sort of figure out how this was going to happen, right? And so, so at the time, this was the EBB organization called the Crew Bay Initiative. These were two of the people who were really active in it. So they had been raising money for 2 projects. And they had been, members of that organization had been, I think, 3 times over the previous year. They were raising money for a microloan association that worked in this slum. So that it gave out small loans to the women who worked in this slum area of the capital city. And then they were giving money to a secondary school, like a junior high school, that was also just on the outskirts of this slum that a lot of kids went to. And so, yeah, this was us getting a tour of the slum. And then here's them. Somebody had presented a check to the microloan, the microcredit association, a couple months before. And so then this was meeting with some of the women from that microcredit organization, where the women were talking about what they were doing with the money and their needs and their family and all that kind of, their families and that kind of stuff. So there's the UNT students doing that. They ended up not being that impressed with either the people in the slum and then, or the school, or the organization that was handling the microcredit association. I kind of like them. They decided, I don't know, they didn't feel that strongly about them as like a reliable partner. They weren't sure, in other words, that all their money was really going to where it should be going, right? So, then the rest of these are from this past summer, this past summer's trip. I can turn on the lights. It's pretty new. Does that look like it works? Might be something. That's a little better, right? No. Too dark? Did nothing change, did it? All right. Well, that's not bad. Yeah, so Ariel, Dominique, Jessica, you guys feel free to comment, right? So these were some of our accommodations this past summer. Not exactly luxurious, but okay.
Yeah, that was luxurious.
This was the luxury place.
Freetown.
Yeah, the place in Freetown was essentially like a board with like a 1-inch mat, right? Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty bad. So we were in the capital city. You know, it's tough because you fly in at night, as it turned out, on this airline, on the flight that we came in. And so poor Ariel had to deal with no electricity and giant bugs, right? On the in a strange room all by herself. So you got like the Courage Award the first night. What's that?
So she was the brave one.
Yeah. Yeah, they had, as it turns out, they were having, you know, it's a third world country, right? And so they were having electricity problems, and probably still are, right? The hotel, or the dormitory kind of place where we were staying, hostel. Yeah, so anyway, Ariel braved it in complete pitch dark, and so giant bugs. Anyway, that was just, actually it was 2 nights, wasn't it? Sorry. Then we went up country. So we went to the second biggest city in Sierra Leone because that sort of was a good center. It was mellow enough that you could sort of see the town in a day or walk around from one side to the other, but it was also a pretty big town in that there was a lot there still, right? So I had been here before, and a friend of mine lives just on the outskirts of this town, and his family. And so he actually suggested, hey, there's a great village, like a really traditionally kind of a traditional-ish African village that's just about 1.5 miles down this forest path. And maybe the kids would like, you know, a traditional African welcome. And so this is us going to the traditional African welcome. Right. Ariel, is that you with the backpack?
Yep.
Right. Oh, these are all out of order, sorry. This is us in the capital city. So back in the capital city, the very first day we kind of hit the ground running. And I had arranged a meeting with Peace